My name is Chris Ragan, and I am the director of the McGill School of Public Policy. For those people who don't know, we have just been sitting through 2 days of wonderful final presentations of Policy Lab from the Policy Lab teams in the MPP program. We went through 8 of them, and I thought they were just terrific. And we learned lots of good things about interesting policy challenges. And everybody who delivered those presentations should be very happy and very proud of what they've accomplished. I wonder if I could, we've got a number of speakers that I'm going to introduce in due course, and it's all going to happen fairly quickly. But we're going to start with a video that Katrine is going to press the button on right now. Those are the 35 students who have been working very hard, very diligently, very creatively over the past 11 months in the MPP program. So there they all are. What I'd like to do now is introduce our 5 speakers, special speakers. And the first one is Suzanne Fortier, who is the principal and vice chancellor of McGill University. Suzanne Fortier is a big fan of, an ally of, and a supporter of the McGill School of Public Policy. And every time I run into Suzanne on campus, and I haven't run into her for a while, and I look forward to running into you again soon, Suzanne, she reminds me that I have the best job on McGill campus. And I think she's right. And I'm reminded of that as I sat through these presentations in the past 2 days. It has been terrific. So Suzanne Fortier, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Ragan. Thank you, Chris. Et bonjour à vous tous. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir d'être avec vous ce soir. I want to start by congratulating all of the students for successfully completing their MPP program in amidst the most extraordinary circumstances. Félicitations, warm congratulations to you. You know, I've met some of you. I had the pleasure and the privilege to attend a few classes, a class by Professor Owen and a class also by Professor Chantal Hébert. I found them so exciting. Also was able to participate, not really participate, but to watch some of the public policy lab presentations. So Chris is right. They're fantastic. And he's also right. He's got the best job. These are so exciting. I really enjoyed the class. I can tell you I learned so much from those classes. I loved it. There was one thing, though, that I found difficult, and that is the coffee breaks were not what I would have hoped for. Normally in coffee breaks, we meet, we have informal chat, we have a chance to talk to one another. And of course, this was not possible. This is not how you had imagined this year. And I will admit that because of all this work and learning in virtual modes, I found it difficult myself because I knew this is not the experience that we could have offered you. This is not what you had hoped for. But I have to say that for this particular group, in some ways, you got a whole lot more than maybe what you were expecting, because this pandemic is really one of the most challenging public policy case we've ever faced. And you were right in the midst of it. And you were, I'm sure, thinking about what good public policies are when the world is facing such crisis. So this is in a way a bit of a silver lining. because the pandemic took us out of our comfort zone. It showed all of us that we have to rethink the way we live, the way we work, and the way we care for one another. And not only as individuals, but of course, also as communities. I know, and you know, that it has clearly demonstrated that what we need are smart and caring public policy. And this is at the heart of the program. It's at the heart of the vision and the mission of the Max Bell School of Public Policy. So as the saying goes, your work is cut out for you. But what an extraordinary opportunity you have to shape the future. And I have to tell you, we're all counting on you, because you know that what you did this year, which was to rise to the occasion, you're ready to do it again. And the world needs you. So I want to also thank you. Thank you for your engagement. And thank you for all you're going to do in the future. Of course, we're having this celebration virtually, but we're planning to have more celebrations for you, for all of our graduates in person in Montreal, and I hope that will happen soon. So I hope that you will be able to come to Montreal to celebrate with us. Et j'espère vraiment que votre séjour en ligne quand même, mais un séjour intense à McGill, vous a donné le sourire au cœur et vous a donné toute l'énergie dont vous avez besoin pour un bel avenir, un avenir qui va vraiment faire profiter le monde entier. So I'd like to also thank the Max Bell Foundation for their generosity and ongoing support. The creation of the School of Public Policy has laid the foundation for work that will benefit not only all Canadians, but all people in the world. Alors, toutes mes félicitations à vous et au plaisir de vous voir en personne très bientôt. Félicitations, congratulations.
Merci beaucoup, Suzanne. Thank you very much. You are certainly right that if there's any program that can benefit by being in the middle of a major global pandemic in terms of thought process, it's a public policy program, because there are so many policy aspects to it. And you're also right in ways that I never really appreciated how important coffee breaks are. And I think the coffee break at the end or in the middle of a class is a crucial time for people to talk and get to know one another. Thank you very much, Suzanne. I'm going to turn now to Jennifer Welsh, a woman who needs no introduction in this program. Jennifer, please take it away.
Hello, congratulations, all of you. You're at the end of quite a marathon. It wasn't a sprint, it was a marathon. And I'm sure it felt that way. I just want to use the word Bell, as in Max Bell, to spell out what I think this program may have left for you. And then I want to give you, you didn't ask me for this, but I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice that have helped me, and I wish I had known when I was in your shoes, and I hope they'll be helpful for you going forward. So Bell, B is for battle scars, of which I think you have many, from your hard work for putting up with your technologically challenged older generation faculty trying to do Zoom. I had a few false starts with my class. You were very patient as I tried to use new programs and adjust to our reality. You have the battle scars of an online program, but also a program that is still new. You were one of the first cohorts. I hope those battle scars will heal and provide you with some laughs as you get further away from the program. The E in Bell is for empathy. I hope and I suspect that we fostered some empathy among all of you, given the time zone challenges, given the workload challenges, and also given the policy problems that we gave you and exposed you to. So I think that's my mom in the background. I think that you have learned a lot of the softer skills that we thought this program would help you to cultivate. The first L in Bell is for linkages. I think we provided you not only with a network of linkages among this close cohort, but I hope through my class and others, we linked you to policy problems in different parts of the world, but also to different disciplines. Now, for some of you, the links to other disciplines were painful because you didn't think you were going to have to do economics, or you didn't think you were going to have to do, some of the analysis we asked you to do because we thought it was important. But I hope those linkages are going to be of long-lasting value. And then lastly, the second L in Bell is for legacy. You left us, I think, an important legacy, particularly in the work that you did to push us and encourage us on equity and diversity. I think that's going to be a long-lasting legacy of your cohort. But I also think, I hope that, especially for those of you who are not from Canada, that we have provided you with a legacy. I had to smile so many times I sat through all the policy labs. And for those of you who are not Canadian, trying to figure out our frustratingly decentralized system and this provincial federal business. And you will always understand that now, leaving the Max Bell program. But on a more serious note, we also left you the legacy of trying to understand our ongoing attempt to reckon with our past in Canada. And while you were finishing this program, we had some pretty traumatic events and facts about our history being unearthed. And I hope that you will take that forward as a reckoning that no country is perfect and no country has yet moved beyond its history. So 3 quick pieces of advice. First one, the most important one, is never confuse your interests with your capabilities. Your interests represent your passion. And even though you will be able to do a lot of things and maybe pulled into doing those things because you can do them, try to hold out for something that really speaks to your interests. I had some diversions in my career that I kind of wish I hadn't had in some ways. But I also think I was sometimes trying to get on the next fastest train that was moving along for my generation, rather than holding out for the things that I was passionate about. So that's my first piece of advice. Second is, remember the public in public policy. You didn't do an MBA. You did some things that resembled an MBA, but this was a degree in public policy. And this pandemic really showed us the limits of private actors and the degree to which we need policy that is based on an understanding of the public good and how to deliver it. And my final piece of advice, some of you may already know it. Those of you that haven't, I hope it will speak to you. You are not invincible. Do not push yourself harder than your body and soul can handle. You've got a long career ahead of you. You have to think about balance and the things that sustain you and bring you joy and comfort. I hope you'll avoid pushing yourself too hard. You may have felt you did in this program, but remember to care for yourself, because it's like the airplane oxygen mask coming down, and we're going to get those in front of us again. The pandemic's ending, where you got to make sure you got your own mask on and look after yourself before you try to do things for others. I have been so privileged to work with you all. Congratulations, stay in touch, and please, from this point onward, do not call me Professor Welsh. Call me Jennifer and call me often. Bye.
Thank you, Jennifer. Terrific, terrific words for Belle and terrific advice as well. Actually, I want to just comment on your legacy. Your legacy comment is that an important part of this cohort's legacy is the establishment of our EDI committee and our momentum, shall I say, in that direction. And I think you're quite right. I would add another legacy to this cohort, which is the creation of PPAGs. The creation of PPAGs, which I think has been fabulous. The Graduate Student Association, I think you folks have done a fabulous job in creating that. Thank you, Jennifer, very much. I'm going to turn now to another woman who needs no introduction in this program, Pearl Eliades.
Thanks very much, Chris. So thank you for the privilege of speaking to you today. And I'm just delighted to be here and talking to you at the culmination of really your monumental achievements today. I said this last year, I'm going to say it again this year. I used to be a student at McGill, and then I did a bunch of other things. And then I was an instructor at McGill, and my daughter went to McGill. And I don't actually think that McGill ever has quite deserved as a university the quality of the students it gets. And you guys are a great example, I think, this year of that, continuing in that tradition, which I stand for and believe in. So congratulations to each and every one of you for making it through what has arguably been one of the most difficult periods of shared struggle on this planet since the Second World War. And I want to talk a bit about that struggle, acknowledging that for many of you, yes, it has been a time of loss. I see that some of you are with your families here today, and I really want to say hello to all of them as well, because you have been such an important part of this journey. And James, I really do feel like I already know your son, and that it's great to see him in the picture as well. And also for those of you who have kids with you. So I want to talk about loss, and I want to talk about love, and I want to talk about legacy. And Jennifer and I did not coordinate the legacy bit. So of course, for many of you, loss has occurred at many levels. Profoundly, some have lost people during this terrible pandemic, and it was worsened by not being able to see people before they passed. That was the case for me during the pandemic, and it was the case for many, many other people as well. Some of you have struggled at another level, working in countries and regions hit by instability and with great worry, much more so than we have in Canada, where we've been very privileged. Or you've had to devote time to caregiving, sometimes unexpectedly, or you've had to manage a really demanding program with all of these things going on in another culture, in another language. And that too has been an incredible struggle. And I applaud everyone for having made it through, and made it through with grace. At the level of the cohort, you've lost an important dimension of your education here. And Suzanne mentioned it earlier, simply by not being here. This year has taught me that much of what makes an education great, beyond instructors who might have resonated with you or even getting your degree, is actually not quantifiable in any of the ways that we have learned to count things in universities. And that brings me to love. It's one of those things that you also can't quantify or count in any of the usual ways. And I don't mean love in the sort of Hollywood sense, or a Bollywood sense, or an Hollywood sense. I mean it in the sense that the Indigenous scholar John Burroughs mentioned in that reading that I asked you to read back in November, which I know you all read really carefully and still remember, right? And I know that must seem like a very long time ago, but you might recall that he observed that love takes up very little place in our conversations about policy, and it takes up very little conversation, even less place in our conversations about law. But what he was talking about when he talked about love was selfless service to a broader community, and its strong connections to the values of equality and autonomy, among other things. These aren't new ideas, of course. Versions of them go back to ancient Greece, as well as other intellectual traditions, and then forward again through Western history and philosophy. You will note that I am not conflating Greek and Western traditions, but that's another debate for another time. The point here is that the recognition of our shared humanity, as well as increasingly the need to include selfless service to the environment, are now understood to be foundational to good policy. I've been touched and really happy to see the role that rights-based and intersectional approaches have had for many of you in your presentations and in your projects and in your policy labs, a bunch of which I also had the privilege of seeing. The role of civil society was central to many of you in your work, and I was just thrilled to see that taking off. These ideas about service to the things that matter and not to the systems themselves or governments for their own sake is foundational, and it's something that I hope that you're going to be taking away with you. This brings me to legacy. Round 2 on legacy. In all of your work this year, I've been really impressed by the commitment and the determination that you've all brought to the school, and you've made it better for yourselves in terms of your own experiences, and you've made the school better. Not all these conversations have been easy. They've required us to push the agenda forward, to keep our ears and our hearts open to tough conversations, to stay in the room and acknowledge that others may have something to say that we may not agree with, but that can nonetheless enrich us and our perspectives to find a way forward together. I was privileged to chair the EDI committee this year, and everybody, every single person who was on that committee, special thanks to all of them, and a special thanks and grateful acknowledgement to Clarissa, who supported me throughout this this whole year, and to Katrine as well, who was just such an important part of the team. All of this, I think, has enriched us and our perspectives and help us move forward. So this is what you take away with you and what no virus or pandemic can take away from you. And I know in closing that all my colleagues at the school, we're going to be here for you. If you ever want to reach out, my door, whether it's virtual or real, is always open. Please stay in touch. I'm going to miss you next year.
Thank you, Pearl. I particularly like your definition, or at least one definition of love, as the selfless service to a broader community. And if there is one thing that ought to resonate within a school of public policy, it is that. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn now to Allan Northcott. Allan Northcott is the president of the Max Bell Foundation. It's always dangerous to make statements, counterfactual statements, statements about how the world would have turned out if only something had happened. But I am inclined to make one now, which is, if the Max Bell Foundation hadn't been there and Allan hadn't been there, I think it's quite reasonable to think that maybe the Max Bell School of Public Policy would not be here. Allan, it's been wonderful working with you over the past few years, and I welcome you here to the 2021 graduation ceremonies. Over to you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for the invitation to be here. It truly is an honor to be part of the program with you today. And so first, and by far most important, on behalf of the board of directors of the foundation, the team of the foundation, a hearty congratulations to each and every one of you on this terrific accomplishment. I think I can say Max himself would be proud of you all today for joining him as an alumni of McGill. Max came to McGill in 1928. He earned a commerce degree, and then he embarked on what turned out to be a pretty varied and pretty successful career in business. And then he returned to McGill 34 years later, and he served on the university's board of governors. And shortly after he joined that board, when he was putting together the philanthropic foundation that bears his name, he included in the letters patent of the foundation that 30% of all gifts that the foundation ever gives shall go to McGill University. That's how proud he was to be associated. These days, that amounts to about $750,000 a year. We continue to feel proud of our long association with the university, and now by extension with all of you. So 6 years ago, the foundation, as Chris alluded, entered into an agreement that sees the foundation's support to the university directed entirely to the School of Public Policy, which you all now know so intimately. For us at the foundation, this is great alignment with our mission. Our commitment, our mission is much like the one that you have all demonstrated, and that is the pursuit of better public policy. So we believe there's just no more effective way to help create and sustain the kind of society we all want to live in. Now, I started my career a long time ago at Max Bell Foundation as a part-time junior program officer. And at the time, the board of directors was doing a strategic rethink of how the foundation operated and decided that the foundation's work should reflect something of the spirit and character of Max Bell himself. Max had succumbed to a brain tumor in 1972, but all of his personal and business files that were in his office at the time of his death had been archived at the Glenbow Museum in Calgary. And one of the first tasks I had when I joined the foundation was to spend several days locked away in a quiet corner of those archives, combing through hundreds of files that were in Max's office, and trying to put together a sketch of what he might have been like as a person to guide the operations of the foundation. Several things stood out to me then. They have guided the operations of the foundation since then. And if you will indulge the fiction, I'm going to try to channel Max a little bit here based on that. So these are the things that I imagine Max himself might have offered you as advice on this occasion. So number one, there's four things. Number one, whatever you're doing to make a living, give some of your time, and if you can spare them, resources to charity. The quality of the society that we live in matters tremendously, and that means taking care of each other. Two, the more power you have, whether it's financial or political or otherwise, the more important it is to keep in mind the well-being of those who have less and are affected by the decisions you make. Number three, very few things of real substance can be accomplished without having to negotiate with others. A good deal is one where all parties have given something up and walked away the better for it. And four, maybe even most important, be brave. Achieving big things requires a lot of elements: smarts, perseverance, hard work, a good team to work with, and a lot of luck. But most of all, it takes courage. And finally, I'll add one personal thing. Each of you is equipped to make really important contributions in the world of public policy. Many of you may go to work for government. Many may go for a quasi-governmental agency or intergovernmental organization or somewhere in the private sector. My last word would be is that I hope, if you haven't already, to consider pursuing public policy from the perspective of the nonprofit world. Why? The fabric of Canadian society is bound together in really important ways by thousands of civil society organizations. They're often the delivery agents for policy choices. And because of that, they have invaluable insights to bring back to the policy development process. So when you're thinking about career possibilities, I'd urge you to give some thought to women's shelters, to immigrant serving agencies, reconciliation organizations, social and healthcare service delivery organizations, conservation and other environment groups, think tanks, foundations even, and the enormous variety of civil society organizations who need your talent too. Thank you very much, and very, very best wishes for your success.
Thank you very much, Allan. The more power and influence you have, the more thought you should give to society's vulnerable. And then at the end, a job pitch for looking for work in civil society. I love it. And that's where you can be thinking about those vulnerable people in civil society. Thank you very much, Allan. And thank you for your ongoing support and tremendous and enthusiastic support of the Max Bell School. It's really very much appreciated. The second last speaker for today needs a little introduction to this group. Nirushaa Senthilnathan is a graduate from our first cohort of the MPP program, a group of 31 students. And she's also the president of the McGill Alumni Public Policy Society, MAPS. And so she is here to say a few words, and she has promised, I'm sure, to reveal no secrets from what happened last year. Nirushaa.
You did say I'm trouble, so you'll find out. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Chris and Maxwell for inviting me to be with you all today. I do want to start by recognizing that I'm speaking from Laval, which is traditionally Haudenosaunee and Kenyan Kahaka territory. My late father came to Canada 3 decades ago as a refugee in efforts to escape persecution and seek a safer life for his family. I want to recognize that it's all of our collective responsibility, those who settled here, those who have migrated, those who have sought refuge, to bring light to the truths of the past and work towards reconciliation for Indigenous communities in Canada who have both historically been marginalized and continued to be vulnerable. So Chris gave you a little bit of an introduction of who I am. So for those of you who don't know me, as Chris said, I am a McGill MPP graduate of the first class, currently president of the McGill Alumni Public Policy Society. My day job is working as a senior policy analyst at CMHC at the intersection of housing and human rights. And previously, I was working in project management under the former Minister of Justice, Erwin Kotler, at the Royal Longbridge Center for Human Rights in the intersection of international human rights policy and political prisoner advocacy, including while I was doing my MPP degree. So it wasn't too long ago that I was exactly in your shoes. And as I look out into this virtual crowd of proud graduates, knowing the diversity that this class brings in experience and perspectives, I want each and every one of you to know that your story and identity matters. I know that we all weren't born with equitable circumstances to thrive in this world. Some of you are the first in your family to graduate university or to get a master's. Others have lived with financial insecurity or had to work while pursuing this degree. Some, particularly in this pandemic, have faced mental health issues. Some of you may be parents, others international students who've bravely ventured into Canada for the first time, and others who've had to remain in your country and yet wake up and go to bed at extremely odd hours in order to just complete this program and survive. So I really want this to be your moment of reflection, not just to celebrate what you've accomplished, but to remember who you are. The things that you've struggled with, the things that have challenged you, your resilience in the face of marginalization, or simply having the odds stacked against you. You now wield power with this degree that you did not have before. With that power, do not lean away from who you are to simply fit into structures that were never built for you, where you're tiptoeing to find solace in minute corners and spaces, just hoping to belong. Instead, lean into who you are, use your voice. Be strategic, but be okay with making people a little bit uncomfortable, because change requires a reimagination of the structures we've built as a society, structures that are far too exclusive of too many perspectives. At many tables you'll find yourself in, your voice might be the only one that represents a certain perspective or identity that otherwise wouldn't be considered within the development of policies that affect industries, organizations, communities across Canada and the world. That's why whether you choose to direct your policy careers in spaces that focus on human rights, economic sustainability, the environment, gender equity, racial inequality, health, law, engineering, technology, cybersecurity, own who you are and all the professional and personal experiences that have led you to where you are today. Because clearly you're doing something right if it got you to where you are today. And we all need you to move towards designing policies that are more holistic and inclusive for people around the world. Many of you have already had years of experience in a variety of fields, and that's actually one of the things I loved most about Maxwell. The range of experience in the students that it drew in, and as you embark upon your public policy careers, whether you already have a few years under your belt before even stepping into this program, or are taking your first role in this realm, know that this community that you've built over the past year is betting on you and is here for you. I deeply believe that organizations, including schools, are only as strong as the culture, communities, and connections they're able to build and sustain. So in your struggles and in your triumphs, know that the people around this virtual table today, that includes the McGill Alumni Public Policy Society and alumni from all over the world, are here to support you in your growth. No matter which corner of the world you find yourself in, or no matter what public policy challenge you thrust yourself into, when you chose this school, you chose the network and the family that you want to be a part of. And I hope that you continue to hold each other up and to be each other's fiercest allies and supporters. Congratulations to the class of 2021. Remember to lean into your stories and to show up as your most authentic selves, to shake up the system that wasn't built for many of us, and to make it a more equitable place where everyone can find belonging. And finally, to rely on each other so that you can go farther together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirushaa. I love the expression, lean into who you are. I've been teaching at McGill for 32 years, I think. And I think that I have never met students more that know who they are and that know how to lean in to who they are than the students that I have met over the 2 years at the Maxwell School. There's something about it. And I don't claim to understand exactly what it is, but there's something about it. Thank you very, very much, Nirushaa. Sounds
like you're recruiting, right?
I'm always recruiting, Nirushaa. Thank you. Thank you all very much. I am keenly aware that it has been a long day and that I am the last thing between you and the less formal part of today's events, which will start in about 45 minutes. So I will keep my comments brief. You have all had quite a year. Not only did you make it successfully through an intensive MPP program, but you did it remotely, spread across 10 different time zones, suffering the repeated plague of Zoom fatigue and missing those opportunities to spend real time and drink coffee with all of your classmates. You will almost certainly go down in McGill and Max Bell history as the COVID cohort or something like that. And though many of you have not actually met face to face, this common feature will be something that binds you together for many years to come. As I think about all of the things that you have accomplished and also where you are likely to be in the near future, I want to encourage you to consider 5 things. Now, Jennifer Welsh had 4 things that spelled out the word bell. My 5 things, I now realize, all begin with a consonant, so they don't spell a nice word, at least in any language that I know. The 5 things I encourage you to think about are humility, confidence, judgment, perseverance, and impact. Humility first. If there is one thing we should all learn as we proceed through life, it is that as we learn more about any specific topic, we realize that there is so much more that we have yet to learn. And if this doesn't build some humility within you, it should. And this knowledge of our own ignorance is nothing to regret or to be ashamed of. The real problem would be if you didn't recognize it. Indeed, I think such enlightened ignorance is probably the beginning of genuine wisdom. Now, we can be humble about our ignorance while also being confident in our ability to secure new knowledge and to solve problems. Your desire to choose this MPP program, even though it was starting in the midst of a global pandemic, and especially your tenacity in sticking to it and successfully completing it, shows clearly that you have plenty of confidence. Don't think for a moment that humility and confidence cannot go hand in hand. They can, and they should. Humility is about truly knowing that the world is far more complicated than you know. Confidence is about having the gumption to roll up your sleeves and get to the real facts and the real analysis, and then trying to solve real problems, perhaps with unconventional approaches. I hope that you look back at the last few months of work, and especially at the intense work you have devoted to your policy lab, and see this combination at work. I'm sure you learned that each of your policy challenges was far more complicated than they appeared to be on day one. And I know from watching your presentations over the past 2 days that you possess the confidence required to develop creative and effective solutions to tough policy problems. Congratulations to you all for that. This brings me to the third thing, which is judgment. As was so clear in your policy lab presentations, public policy is much more of an art than a science. The art is in recognizing and evaluating all of the trade-offs that exist within any interesting and real-world policy problem. There is no better example, as Suzanne suggested, than COVID-19. The inherent trade-offs between medical science, privacy and other rights, collective responsibilities, economic impacts, just to mention a few. And the more art there is inside of any policy issue, the more judgment you need in assessing what works and what doesn't, what guiding principles are relevant and which are not, and which recommendations to make and why. Many people don't like processes that involve a lot of judgment because they think it's too soft or too imprecise or too subjective. My view is that if this kind of judgment isn't necessary, it's almost certainly not a very interesting policy problem. Public policy is about society, and society is a messy thing. The world's most interesting policy problems are complicated, with many moving pieces and many messy trade-offs, and you will get nowhere if you are not prepared to use judgment. But relying on judgment isn't a license to just say or argue anything you like. The onus is still on you to build a good case, to know how to make that case, whom to make it to, and when, and how to communicate it effectively. And what are the ingredients to good judgment? The right combination of humility and confidence can get you a very long way, but they will only get you there if you persevere, the fourth thing. Policy problems do not solve themselves. The changes in public policy that you will inevitably care the most about are those that apply to the biggest issues, and they will be the toughest to solve because of entrenched legal or economic or political or social interests. Reducing income inequality will require policies that some people strongly oppose. The same is true for addressing climate change, or reforming democratic systems, or regulating the internet, or eliminating gender or racial discrimination. Perseverance in the world of public policy is about having the stamina to work hard to find the path forward, to bring about the policy change that you seek, talking to the right people at the right time, in the right manner, with the right message. Perseverance is about taking the time to be creative in which path you take and how you build the coalitions that you need to get to your destination. Humility and confidence matter hugely. Judgment is also a central part of the package. But without perseverance, your great policy solution will never see the light of day. And if the policy idea never gets anywhere, have you really had any impact on the world? And that brings us to the fifth thing, impact. Public policy is far more than merely an intellectual exercise. It is so important because, and only because, of the impact it has on ordinary people. People like Aminata in Kenya, or Nadia Couture, or Bella the baker. You met them today, or perhaps that was yesterday. I've got my days mixed up. But don't ever lose sight of the fact that public policy is about people. We all want to make a difference in some way. What to do? So I want to say something that's similar to what Jennifer said. She talked about don't confuse or don't mix up your interests and your capabilities. I want you to encourage you to think about a Venn diagram showing two sets, the set of things I'm really good at and the set of things that matter most to me. Find the intersection of those two sets and unleash yourself. Combine your humility and your wisdom with your confidence and your judgment, and work hard, persevere, to help change the world in the way that is meaningful to you. It has long been clear to me that the biggest difference I will ever make in the world is through my students. In other words, my impact and our school's impact is you. And based on what I have seen over the past 2 days, I couldn't be more proud of you and your potential to make the world a better place. On that note, please join me in raising a glass if you have a glass, or we can just pretend to raise a glass, to what may be called the COVID cohort from the Maxwell School, the class of 2021. Congratulations to you all, and all the very best for your future.